Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today we're going to talk about Megyn Kelly, the beautiful Megyn Kelly. She just recently called out her former employer at Fox News because of all the ridiculous pro-regime change propaganda that Fox News has been spewing ever since Trump took out Maduro of Venezuela. And it's like Fox News is back in 2002, 2003, 2004, like how they were shilling for the Iraq War. It's just terrible. So she called out Fox News directly. It's great to see her. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about CNN released a little bit of a compilation of Trump talking about regime change, which I think is pretty telling and kind of depressing, if we're being honest, as someone who's a big Trump supporter over the years. The compilation's a little rough to listen to, so we're going to discuss it all. But before we get into it all, I need you to do something for me, folks. It'll take you like 2-3 seconds. Subscribe. Whether you're listening on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe. And if you are listening on YouTube, like and comment. Helps with the algorithm, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to play the clip in a little bit, but as you guys know, Megyn Kelly used to work for Fox News. She left Fox News around 2017. Around the same time when Fox News had the whole Me Too scandals with Roger Ailes, Bill O'Reilly, etc. Megyn left. She went to NBC, and she didn't do very well at NBC because NBC just had a bunch of 40-year-old cat moms or cat ladies that are like big libtards. And they didn't like Megyn Kelly because to them she was the Fox News chick. So she didn't do really well at NBC, and she controversially one time questioned why blackface was so controversial, which, talk about a blonde moment. I don't know why blackface is so controversial. It's like, okay, Megyn, you're really smart, Megyn. You're very pretty, but, that was not one of your best moments. That's like asking why a Jewish person would be upset about someone denying the Holocaust. It's like, really? I think the answer to that's pretty obvious. So it's like, why is blackface so controversial? It's like, I don't know, Megyn. You can figure that one out. But so ultimately she leaves NBC, and then she starts doing her own show on the YouTubes, and it's been super popular. Her show has grown tremendously. I mean, she has her own network now that she does stuff with Mark Halperin, other people. She's on Sirius XM, iHeartRadio. I mean, the show is extremely, and I like the show. I've always liked Megyn Kelly, and she also is prettier now than she was 10, 15 years ago, which is just sort of wow, how did she pull that off? But let's not get into. I've already talked about Megyn Kelly's aesthetics, so let's not get into that again. But she's very pretty. But her show is great, and what I like about her show is in all seriousness, she platforms people you don't typically see in mainstream media. She had Aaron Monte on yesterday to talk about the Venezuela regime change that's taking place. She has Glenn Greenwald on. She's had a lot of more controversial and more people on the left. And that's great to see. I don't like shows that live in echo chambers. It's just so boring. It's like, I don't want to hear that Trump's great 24/7. Partly because I already like Trump, so it's just not that interesting. And it's also, I don't think Trump's perfect. I don't like what he did in Venezuela just now. So I want to hear criticism of Trump when I think it's legitimate. And Megyn Kelly's been very good, I think, at being definitely pro-Trump. Which is so hilarious, by the way. For those who don't know, for those who weren't around in 2016, the fact that Megyn Kelly's become a very strong Trump supporter is so ironic. Because you want to remember, folks, or if you weren't paying attention at the time, you should know this. Trump and Megyn Kelly were feuding throughout the 2016 campaign. I mean, Donald Trump, this billionaire running for president with no political experience, half his time on the campaign was him shitting on Megyn Kelly because she asked him a tough question at the first Republican debate in Cleveland, I think in 2015. And the question was about all the insults Trump had done toward women, calling them fat, ugly, etc. And Trump responded that he only said that stuff about Rosie O'Donnell, which was a killer line, by the way, a killer line. And Trump was very offended by that question. For the next year, he was just constantly shitting on Megyn Kelly on Twitter. He'd be giving some major policy speech about how we need to make sure Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon, but then would also say that Megyn Kelly's a 2 and needs to shut her fat pie hole. It's like He'd be talking about why we need to lower the corporate tax rate, but then it would also discuss why Megyn Kelly might have been on her period during the debate. Like, what are you doing, Donald? But so and Megyn, in all fairness to her, she didn't really get into the feud. Her coverage of Trump was definitely critical, but she didn't insult him like Trump was insulting her. And they kind of reconciled at the end of the campaign, although the tension was always there. But once Megyn left Fox News and, like I said, started her own channel, she's been a big Trump supporter, and I think legitimately so. I don't think she's pretending to be. I think she legitimately appreciates Trump, partly because of how bad the Biden administration was. It's like, once Trump was obviously going to be the Republican nominee when DeSantis' campaign tanked, how can you not support Trump if you're on the right? If you consider how awful the Biden administration was, it's like, of course she was going to be a Trump supporter. Like, I think that's legitimate. So I say all this to give more context that Megyn Kelly, she's been a little bit more, let's say, cautious about supporting what we just did in Venezuela. She did support Trump striking Iran for the most part. She questioned it a tiny bit, but she was pretty supportive, especially when it became clear, at least for now, that we weren't doing regime change in Iran. We were just striking their nuclear facilities, which is much more defensible. Like, again, I think that's a reasonable opinion to have, that you can be against regime change but still think it was good to knock out Iran's nuclear facilities to the extent we actually successfully did that. That position's coherent. It's not incoherent. So I can respect that opinion, even though I still don't think I like doing it. I understand that perspective. But Megyn Kelly, her show came back this past Monday, and she was pretty reserved about the whole thing, and she had Aaron Mate on to discuss sort of the potential drawbacks with doing regime change in Venezuela. And she did a little bit of, not a monologue, but she kind of explained why she was sort of not sure about why we're doing this. And she also called out her former employer, Fox News, basically accusing them of doing state propaganda. So I'm going to play the clip now, and then we're going to discuss in more detail.
I really think this is something we need to consider both sides on. I really do. Let me just tell you something. When I was at Fox News, which was a long time, 14 years, I would have known exactly what to do in the wake of Trump's attack in Venezuela, his retrieval, shall we say, to put it in mild terms, of Nicolas Maduro. I would have known that I was supposed to cheerlead it. And I turned on Fox News yesterday, and I'm sorry, but it was like watching Russian propaganda. There was nothing skeptical. It was all rah-rah, cheerleading. Yes, let's go. And that's fine. I love our military as much as anyone, and I believe in President Trump. But there are serious reasons to just exercise a note of caution before we just get on the rah-rah train. All right, I have done that enough times in my career as a Fox News anchor to have been embarrassed enough to know I'm going to stay on the yellow light for this. I'm not in the green light territory. I'm not in the red light territory either, but I am staying in the yellow light territory for now. I see all of the strategic advantages of what he's done. Trust me, I do. I see that other countries like Russia and China and Cuba were all over Venezuela and its oil, posing a potential threat to the United States. I get that. That's actually the most persuasive argument, and obviously the real one, and none of this bullshit about law enforcement. But I have seen what happens when you cheerlead unabashedly U.S. intervention in foreign countries, thinking it's for our good and for the international good, only to wind up with what we've called quagmire in places like Iraq, not to mention Libya. We're not great at going into these foreign countries, decapitating them at the leadership level, and then saying either we're going to steer the country to a better place or it's going to steer itself. Either one. They just, 9 times out of 10, they don't work out well. And what does it mean in terms of boots on the ground? Trump is saying, I'm actually fine with that in Venezuela. Well, whose boots? Because I have a 16-year-old boy. And I have a 12-year-old boy, and I have a 14-year-old girl. And a lot of my listeners have children, too, who are actually the ones who might have to fill the boots. So I think I speak for a lot of moms and dads, for that matter, when I say I'm staying in yellow territory until we know more. And I will not be joining the Fox News cheerleading brigade this time. I've been burned too many times.
By the way, I think it's pretty telling that Megan's sort of acknowledging that if she was still working at Fox News, she would feel the need to essentially support what Trump did in Venezuela blindly. I think that's not to suggest that she was being dishonest when she was working at Fox News and that she wasn't stating her true beliefs and not giving legitimate analysis or, accurate analysis. But I think what she's trying to say there is what she's trying to say is that when you work for an outlet like Fox News, that one supports, generally speaking, hawkish foreign policies, regime change, America being a globalist imperial empire. That's just what Fox News supports, whether you agree with it or not. And it's also a quote unquote conservative outlet, so they have to support the Republican administration regardless of what they do, right? So yeah, if you work for Fox News, you are going to feel compelled to support what Trump just did. And that's the problem with corporate media is even if you're someone who doesn't support regime change wars or conflicts throughout the world and getting involved in the Middle East unnecessarily, if you work for a network like Fox News, unless you want to lose your job, lose that fat paycheck, lose that contributorship, lose if you're an anchor, lose your job. I mean, it's very hard to go against the grade there. I mean, it's very difficult. And I think Megan's acknowledging that. And what I really appreciate is her not just talking about calling out Fox, and she's right. It has been, I mean, if you've watched Fox News the last few days, it's been ridiculous. I mean, talking about, oh, wow, Maduro, he was indicted. Of course we had the right to kidnap him. It's like he was indicted. He's not a U.S. citizen. We have no jurisdiction over him. Who gives a fuck if we indicted him? What if China indicted Trump, they'd have the right to kidnap our president because they indicted him in China? That's not how it works. So that's just one example. I mean, it's just, the propaganda on Fox News, it's just been ridiculous. And they're not even pretending this is about drugs, frankly, because the administration it's becoming more and more obvious. They're not even going to use the drug argument. I mean, I think they've admitted that one of the cartels that they kept talking about as the pretext for doing all these bombings of these boats doesn't even exist. I think they admitted one of these cartels doesn't even exist. So this just shows you what a crock this whole thing was. It was obvious it was a crock, but you sort of were hoping to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, and I was to my best ability. But at a certain point, it became obvious this was about regime change, so I wasn't surprised when it happened. So Megan's totally right. It has been total state propaganda from Fox News. Even people like Laura Ingraham, who's criticized regime change, who's talked about how we need to spend money in the United States. She was doing an interview last night, and she said, I'm sure the Venezuelan people will be fine to pay us back for all the resources we're going to have to put into Venezuela to quote-unquote rebuild it. It's like, really, Laura? You're okay with us using all of our money and resources to flow into Venezuela because you think the Venezuelan people will be happy to pay us back? It's like, okay, bro. So Laura's a hack, but I've never been a big fan of hers because she's just disingenuous. But in all fairness, she probably feels the pressure that Megyn was talking about. But what I really liked about what Megyn had to say there was she explained why, just on a personal level, she's skeptical of this because she has sons and a daughter. And sons that are getting close to the age you would be if you wanted to join the military. 16, 14, a young daughter as well. And yeah, there's a lot of parents who lost their kids in these regime change wars. It's terrible. Look at all the veterans that lost arms and legs in Iraq, Afghanistan, in the Middle East generally for these regime change wars. If you look, even what happens, and not just U.S. soldiers, but parents of kids who live in the countries. Just look at Libya. I mean, there's still a civil war happening in Libya because of our actions. So I think it was a very, very nice moment for Megyn to get a little vulnerable. Or maybe not vulnerable is the right word, but to explain just on the human cost of doing regime change wars. Now, one could say, well, we're not really in a war. We kidnapped Maduro. We got out. Everything's fine. But the reality is the regime hasn't totally been changed yet in Venezuela. Maduro's vice president is still in power. Trump has, sort of implicitly, but really more explicitly, made clear that if she doesn't do everything that we want her to do, we're going to take her out too. And she has made it clear that she's not just going to be a lapdog for the United States. So it's very likely more military action is going to have to take place in Venezuela. And so Megan talking about the potential risks of sending in our troops and losing our boys and women to more war is totally reasonable because more military action is very likely. I mean, these regime changes very rarely go the way the United States says they will go. It's always way more messier. It almost never works out. So it was great to hear Megan talk about that. And the other thing we should note is this is a bit of a betrayal from Trump. He has campaigned for years about why regime change wars are bad and not a good use of resources, and how we need to spend money in the United States, not in all these countries that we don't know the names of. And in fact, CNN, which I'm not a fan of by any means, but they created a little bit of a compilation of Trump shitting on regime change wars versus what he's saying now. And I'm going to play the compilation. A little tough to hear, honestly, because I'm a Trump supporter. But you know what, folks? We got to be honest when, I don't want to be disingenuous. So let's play the compilation. And it's a little sad to listen to, if I'm being honest.
Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you. We believe that the job of the United States military is not to wage endless regime change wars. You have to do something with Mexico. Mexico has to get their act together because they're pouring through Mexico, and we're going to have to do something. The cartels are running Mexico. Whether you like it or not, it's not nice to say, but the cartels are running Mexico. We will stop racing to topple foreign, and you understand this, foreign regimes that we know nothing about, that we shouldn't be involved with.
There's been protesters killed in Iran.
If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States. Regime change in Iraq, regime change in Libya, regime change in Syria, and every other globalist disaster for half a century. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it. We're getting out of the nation-building business and instead focusing on creating stability in the world. The American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Stupid foreign wars in countries that you've never heard of. This Tuesday is your chance to stand up and declare that you're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, that's a little painful for me to hear, to be honest, because the Trump calling out the terrible consequences of regime change, talking about how we need to focus on our country, and then seeing him defend regime change, talking about doing more regime change in South America and potentially Iran. It's just kind of sad to listen to be honest. And you want to remember, folks, the reason why Trump became the Republican nominee in 2016, which is where many of the anti-regime change comments come from in that compilation, he became the Republican nominee running against Republican orthodoxy, foreign policy orthodoxy for sure. And the orthodoxy of the Republican Party at that time was a very hawkish, regime change-oriented foreign policy. And Trump just ripped that shit to shreds, okay? He went after Jeb Bush, called out Jeb Bush's brother to his face. He literally said to Jeb Bush, the brother of George W. Bush, he told Jeb Bush that your brother lied us into Iraq, and there were no weapons of mass destruction, and he knew there weren't, and he lied, and people died, and he didn't keep us safe. And your wife's a 2. She's a 2.5 on a good day. He said this shit to George W. Bush's brother. I mean, he destroyed Republican orthodoxy on having to do with war, particularly regime change wars. And you got to remember, the Republican Party was so unpopular at the time. Even with 8 years of Obama, the Republican Party was still extremely unpopular because George W. Bush was such a terrible president, in large part because of all these ridiculous wars he got us into. That the only way a Republican was going to win the presidency in 2016 is if you ran against Republican orthodoxy, which Trump did, and that's a big reason why he became president. That's why he beat Hillary Clinton, in large part. So to now hear Trump in the recent clips that you heard saying that we may have to go into Colombia, Cuba, Iran, it's like, oh my God, man. I mean, his national intelligence director, Tulsi Gabbard, she's been going around for the last several months talking about how we don't do regime change anymore. Now we're doing it in Venezuela. Trump's threatening to do it with other countries. It's just kind of sad. It's just sad to see. I still love Trump, but it's, I did not want to hear that from him. And again, maybe if we just got Maduro and then like wiped our hands clean of it, maybe that's one thing. Maybe I'd be okay with it. But my big issue is I know that's not the last of it because his regime is still in place effectively, even though he's in New York now, I think. I think he was just arraigned, Maduro. But his regime is still in place in part, and Trump's already committed to basically rebuilding Venezuela. It's not what America First is, folks. Like, you can support Trump, and you can even think this may have good benefits for the world, but I don't see how this directly benefits the United States at all. Okay, our infrastructure in the United States sucks. The job market isn't great. Inflation is still a problem. More and more jobs are being automated or shipped overseas. The tariff policy is inconsistent. We have so many problems at home. Why are we nation building in Venezuela? Why are we threatening to do more regime change in Cuba and Colombia? Why are we doing Israel's bidding with Iran? This is not what we voted for, folks. When it comes to foreign policy, this is not what we voted for. In terms of the border and many domestic policies, yeah, Trump's kept his promises. But foreign policy, for the most part, he just hasn't. And we have to be honest about that, folks. Even if, again, you can support Trump overall, which I still generally do, but we can't be against regime change only if the Democrats are in power. Okay, we have to be consistent and call out regime change, whether it's a Republican initiating it or a Democrat president initiating it. So we want to be consistent. I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to call balls and strikes going forward. Even though overall I still love President Trump on a personal level, I adore him. But when I'm doing political commentary, you got to be objective. So we'll see what happens. Well, we'll hope for the best. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for listening. Again, please subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. I greatly appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, like and comment. Again, I appreciate it a lot. And we'll see you back tomorrow, folks. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.